Hi, Judy. I just need a minute to set up the call with the rest of the instructions here and claim the host spot.
Okay, how are you?
Good, good. Hope you're doing well.
Pretty good. A dreary night.
Yep. Be right back.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. Sorry I'm late. If I'm
You're
late,
right on time. So,
I feel like it's just my usual refrain. I'm usually
Okay.
late, so.
so I don't know if Julie's joining us or not.
I think she is. She messaged me earlier today just to confirm.
All right, then we can wait before we call things to order. But we're being recorded and transcribed, so. I was disappointed to have to cancel the library reservation I made, so be nice if there's some way to thread that needle so we can meet in person. I think if we all showed up at the library with our own laptops and sat there and if I brought an external mic and we just had that as the only live mic so there wouldn't be feedback, and if I logged in and we did the transcription, then I think we'd be hitting all the buttons that are required or hitting everything that's necessary, but the town's guidance is that it can only be in rooms that have the setting, you know, but I think we'd be meeting the state requirement. But I guess
it also will be a culture shift too. I feel like now my husband's at school committee tonight, so I was kind of thankful that it was
online. Yeah.
I think, John, you can go ahead and Julie will join if she's able to.
Okay, great. Then we'll call things to, well, I need to start taking notes too. We will call things to order at 7:32 p.m. And all righty. So the other challenge, of course, with these subcommittee meetings is chair also being no taker. So apologies for that. All right. So we do have an agenda, and I will share that, and then we can move into things. And but a fairly simple agenda, call to order. It's not on the agenda, but we should approve the minutes from the last meeting. So I will suggest we deviate from the agenda slightly to do that, and then public engagement, and Andrea can introduce herself. Judy, Myra, I don't know if you had a chance to review the minutes that were shared with you so thoughtfully an hour or two before the meeting.
Well prepared.
So
I just have one correction.
Oh, sure thing.
It's the Conservation Commission, not committee.
Okay, yep, thank you. Myra, did you have an opportunity to review?
I did not, but I have confidence.
Okay.
And I thought, Sean, just in terms of process, I thought the full committee approves the minutes and not the subcommittee, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. What other subcommittee I was on, we approved those minutes.
Okay.
So I guess we could approve them for referral with correction to the committee. You know, I'm very confused by all this, because also there's a requirement that we be for sharing these within 2 weeks, but of course they're not approved. So I guess we're sharing draft minutes is the requirement. In any case, but everyone just moved to share those for approval to the committee then?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. All right. Public engagement. Andrea, would you like to introduce yourself? I imagine you might have probably met Myra already on at least one of the other subcommittee meetings. I don't know, and maybe not Judy.
No.
So.
Hello, my name is Andrea Harkness, and I've been lurking in all of the subcommittee meetings for the last 3 to 4 weeks, as I am interested in doing work for a class for Bristol Community College. It's green buildings, and my interest is in actually pursuing a study of affordable housing in Wakefield, and seeing where I can understand what has been done, what might be done. But I also have a longstanding interest in sustainability, and so I thought I would just get my feet wet by attending all of the meetings I could.
And Andrea, do you live here in Wakefield?
Yes, I do. I've been here for the last 3 years, and I live in an apartment with 6 units, so we don't qualify for recycling. So I've had to figure out by hook and crook a way to recycle, and we also compost, but not through Black Earth. We have a friend who takes our compost. Yeah, I'm very excited by what I see going on in Wakefield, and would like to contribute and do more towards it.
And we did have the opportunity, Dan and I, to meet Andrea in person on Saturday, so we can confirm she is a real person who is at least capable of reaching Wakefield. Yeah, so Thanks for joining us, Andrea, and glad to see you again. All right, so our agenda is fairly simple. So really the two substantive items are the review of the goals and activities for subcommittee and input. So I think that'll where we just take most of our time trying to figure out where we want to put our most of our efforts, give any updates if the people have updates on specific things that they might have done. I've followed up on a few to-dos. I have to admit my own to-dos, I didn't get to as many as possible because of a family health issue that took away some of my time this month. But and then we'll also discuss just further coordination with the Conservation Commission and the Open Space Committee thing for a few minutes, anything else that's arising from there. But I don't think we need a lot of time today. If there are no objections, I'll move on to just this review of our goals and activities. And for this, I'm going to refer for my own sake to the notes and minutes from before. I can share a screen if anybody wants me to, but otherwise I'll just step through this. So the first one was kind of just this idea of maintenance routines and funding for the town's recreational facilities and trails to better understand that, but also to look at funding models used in other towns for, where particularly where there might be engagement on foundations, private donors for that. So I haven't done anything to follow up on that. I don't know, Judy or Myra, if you have any comments or concerns or anything to report on that.
I've been a little delinquent this month.
I think I shared with you both the Trail Stewards Handbook that I think it was Burlington had put together. And I think that will be helpful because I, as I said before, I don't see the town maintaining the trails. I think it's, kind of a time and manpower issue. And it's the way other towns tackle it is through volunteer trail stewards. And I think that's really the way to go. There aren't a ton of trails in Wakefield, so I think it would be manageable. And also joining up with maybe the Melrose, and I think Stoneham has trail stewards as well, to see how they do it and perhaps share some of their people if they're interested where they're adjoining trails. That might be helpful.
In Melrose and Stoneham, do you know who coordinates that trail steward program? Would there
in Melrose, it's the Conservation Commission. It's the agent, Eric Devlin. And I've spoken with them about it in the past. And they never have a problem getting volunteers and keeping them. And they visit the trails at least once a month, and they report back to the commission once a month if there are any issues or any type of follow-up.
Okay.
And this month there was actually an issue in Wakefield. Sad to say, someone was storing things it's on town property adjacent to one of the trails. But I think that's helpful because otherwise you're not going to happen along something like that. And it's important to get it addressed.
All right. So I might follow up with you offline to get Eric's contact information and just get some input, but that sounds great. And this, I mean, one of the separate items was volunteers, but we were hoping that some of the folks who are volunteering at these various in-person events we're doing are people we could reach out to and invite in to participate in this. Really poor weather on Saturday meant that we were not getting a lot of foot traffic. The farmers market was quiet in general. It's the first time I've seen, I've never seen so much bread go back to the bread shop. So we did get a few names, but relatively modest number of names, and I'm hoping that we might do better at the town day on this coming weekend.
Judy, do you know sort of what the season is? I mean, so I can imagine that there'd be a big push on the trails in the spring, but I'm wondering if there would, it would be wise to also think about a sort of short-term sort of cleanup before the winter. I just don't have a sense of sort of even what the seasonality is of when sort of trail volunteers would be the most active. And I'm just afraid we'll miss an opportunity if we don't think about Melrose.
In Melrose, they're pretty much year round, unless the snow is too deep. They go all through the winter. So it's people that generally walk the trails anyways. So it's more like they figured while they were out there, they may as well give some feedback. which is great to have some eyes out there.
So they're
So
just
I
giving
think-
feedback and somebody else is then going in and trimming, or are they going out there with their clippers? Sort of
No,
after
they can
having
do the
done some
trimming as
training?
well. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the trails are pretty well established. There may be some small trimming that's needed, but I think for the most part, it's just generally they can bring their loppers and take care of it. You know, it's not major, unless something like a giant tree falls, then they can certainly call the Parks Department and they take care of it. Or they just leave it and then people just walk over it. Because that's happened as well. It's just another point of exercise.
Great. Well, I will follow up with Eric, find out more about just kind of the logistics of
Great.
coordinating that, and that's maybe something that we can do here. And I think that's a great way to engage people, and I can just imagine anyone who has a habit of walking certain trails or whatever
Right,
might either, for many people, it'd be an easy thing to just take this on and to and probably a rewarding thing to feel
Right.
that like there's an extra purpose.
and I think,
to-
right, and I think as the open space plan starts to roll out, maybe there'll be some more interest,
Mhm.
hopefully.
Excellent point.
Judy, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Where does one find the scope of the trails that are available in Wakefield? Like the number of trails and where they're located?
Wakefield doesn't have the trails mapped, but if you go on to MAPC has a trail log, and All Trails has some of them, but MAPC, I think, has the majority of the main ones.
That's one of our things on our list, Andrea, is wondering sort of how we can formalize that a little bit. I can tell you, you know, we've done in the past, I don't know if you've ever heard the geocaching app. The geocaching app has many trails in Wakefield that we have used to figure out where we are when we're on Wakefield public land. But it's not, that's one of the things on our list.
Yeah, yeah, to both, yeah, so that relates to the other, one is, we'll get to them in a minute, one is public education and dissemination around opportunities in Wakefield for recreation and trails. As Judy shared with us or reminded us before too, we want to make sure that we're only publicizing those things where there's capacity for increased foot traffic. And then another is this idea of maybe actually using volunteers to map things in different tools. So the geocaching tool or All Trails is another popular app, right? Where right now Wakefield trails are often missing, right? But
And I know Rob Darnell had mapped a bunch of trails as well. I think he may have shared them with MAPC. He had gone out and put in the coordinates. So that his may be up there as well.
I can reach
Okay.
out to him. I know he was working on that. Andrea, just the majority of our trails in town are located in our town forest. And so that's the piece of land that's next to JJ Rounds Park off of Main Street, sort of connects over to sort of, and then there's a piece there and then a piece that's close to Maple Way Park, which is off of Oak Street. And others can sort of scope that out more, but there's a pretty good solid trail system in there, in those woods, in both of those parcels of land. And some people even then have a connection that includes a small amount of road travel between there and Breakheart, which is of course state land.
great. The next item was volunteer coordination. I think we just covered that in this discussion as well. So Julie, we're just going through the list of priorities from before and just kind of doing updates on those.
I'm so
and
sorry, I completely lost track of time.
no need to apologize at all. I was jumping over cats to try to get here on time. All right, so the next item from our previous discussion was public outreach on public lands in towns and recreational opportunities and land use related activities already present in town. So I think we were kind of just touching on parts of that as well. So, I mean, obviously these mapping activities as well as the outreach for the volunteer things are first steps on that. I know that Tiana, in the context of the community education subcommittee, has been chatting quite a bit with some of the town officials, both on the public communications part as well as the just how do we do things in the right way part. So I think if we do some of these mapping things, then that will give us something to share. One thing we didn't really talk about before is if we have capacity either within this group or know somebody on the sustainability committee, that if we wanted to bring something to the town, I'm forgetting the name of the communications person at the town, but like bring something where we were already preparing most of the content, including mapping, if there's somebody who has the skills to present that in a nice way. You know, we can certainly provide, you know, a list I could do, but something where there's more of a mapping or something where there might be some more skills involved in presenting that in the best way.
Well, it sounds like there's like a specific like coordinator. It sounds like from what you're saying, Judy, I'm going to reach out to Rob and just see if I can sort of recreate what he did or confirm where he put that information. But it
Yeah,
sounds like there's like specific coordinates or something that you put it in that information into.
Yeah, and the engineering department has a GIS person, so she may be able to help as well. I mean, I know her time is limited, but it may be something that she could help with.
So and it's Jen McDonald is the name of the person I was trying to remember. So
yes.
that, so Tiana's been chatting with her just about all sorts of communications issues around things we're doing as a committee. So I think if we can put some things together in a way that can then be shared with Jen, that would be the next step. You know, I personally would love signage that isn't just downloadable or flyers to pick up in the library. I mean, I think those things are great, but if there's also ways that we might, you know, if there's a way of getting signage outside of town hall or somewhere downtown or something like that, you know, I realize that requires funds and everything.
For the trails, you mean?
Yeah, for the trails and the
Yeah.
general opportunities. And again, keeping in mind your cautions, Judy, about promoting those places where there's capacity and being mindful of where ecological concerns, you know, might not be as much resilience to increase foot traffic.
We had talked about that in conservation, we've talked about it for a while, about the trail signage and maybe putting up some information about the tracks you may see and different types of anything you might see on the trails. But we also spoke about having a QR code that could possibly link to the trail maps. So I mean, that's not really in my capability, but I'm sure it's there's someone that could help us with that. And I think that would be huge, having that, and other towns have that as well. I mean, Melrose has an actual printed trail map, which was fine when they put it together, you know, 10, 12 years ago. But having it right at the, having a little kiosk right at the trailhead. And I did notice there's a trail off Holland Road, and they have one of the recognizable hiker signs right at the trailhead, which I hadn't noticed before. Someone must have just put that up.
Yeah. QR codes that I can do, and that I think is great, because I mean, I always find it silly that I'm taking a photo of a, you know, of a half faded map and then zooming in, and like, you actually should just be
and
able
then you
to,
still can't see it, right?
You know, so you know, so that, so in a way, maybe having less signage than some other towns now allows us to catch up and be where people are rather than where they were. Great. The next item on that on our list was just you know, again, I think we have this as a separate item, was working with and supporting the Conservation Commission town planning processes. We have that listed as a separate item, so we can skip over that for now. And the trail mapping we've also just discussed. Next one is the trees. Myra, this was your idea last time, so I don't know if you have any updates, but the way I captured in the notes was just coordinating with the planning board about kind of information about trees, as well as providing information to private landowners about what considerations they should have in mind. But is that
yeah, I didn't connect with the planning board. I did connect with some of our local tree advocate people who really, I am not an expert on trees, but I know some people who are, and people who have contacted the committee in the past. And so I think I may just I just have need to do better at connecting them with the planning board. I think that the idea here was that the planning board, in thinking that they could use some education on native trees and the advantage of native trees and the potential to encourage native tree planting as a part of their guidance around the overall sort of planning, you know, the zoning or whatever the plan that they're creating, especially maybe around the lake or some other areas. So I did half of that homework and I didn't do the other half to make it be useful. But there are definitely people in town who are very interested in trees and very concerned. And I think I will say in some of my conversations with people about trees, just sort of an interest in also sort of circling back on the trees that have been planted and what the plan is, or what the, you know, is there reporting on sort of how trees are doing? Because I think, especially after the drought this year, just wanted to make sure that we're planting trees and we're taking care of them so that they're thriving instead of just sort of continually planting more trees. And so that was just another area that I'm just not necessarily in the scope of this subcommittee, but just another interest that came up of making sure that we're being wise stewards with our tree resources.
So Massachusetts does have a Tree Wardens and Foresters Association that does seem to have some outreach capacity. And I mean, my general impression is that Massachusetts Ag Extension is a relatively minor presence in the state compared to what it was a few decades ago, or what some of our neighboring states have. But we could reach out to them for some of that kind of technical assistance and see if they might have some town-facing things.
UMass has a good resource on their website, the UMass Forestry School, and other towns have very detailed street trees, especially. You know, they continually update. And also the city of Cambridge has just undertaken a canopy mapping system undertaken by the University of Vermont. And I spoke with their director who was running it, and they're waiting to get the final report, and then he'll share it with me. And I think it's something, I talked to the Conservation Commission about it, and it tracks not only the street trees, but it's all vegetation across the town. And it uses drone technology. So it shows you where there's a need for more planting, where there's a robust amount of planting. So I think it's good for future planning, especially resiliency wise. So, and they talk about an urban forestry, which is the same, you know, encompassing all the plantings across town. And that's something that I'd like to have as a future goal under the open space plan, an urban forestry master plan, so that there is a document that talks about plantings townwide and encouraging individuals to plant, you know, responsibly and basically just to plant something. So I think that would be, you know, something down the road.
And if we're looking for sort of like areas where the different sort of town initiatives converge, I know the master plan committee meeting, which is in 2 weeks from tonight, is talking about the sort of social vulnerability and the sort of resilience, you know, sustainability and resilience of the sort of part of the master plan. And I know that there's a huge, I know I was just watching this really interesting, I think it must have been on PBS, this where they did a study in Boston about urban heat and the neighborhoods that have fewer trees being a lot like hotter, just like, I mean, like a 15-degree swing. And so just like to your point, Judy, about thinking about the canopy cover and the amount of vegetation in neighborhoods, and just making sure that we're equitable in thinking about how we use those resources.
Just resiliency alone, the storm in Florida, there's a area down there, Babcock Park, and it was built with resilience in mind. It's solar powered. They didn't lose their power. They're on wells, so the water wasn't an issue. And they chose plants that were not only native, but were placed strategically so that they didn't get the battering winds of the storm. And I think that's the thinking that the town has to start looking at, and I think it's, you know, there really hasn't been much or any discussion about that, about how we are going to be more resilient in our land use. And I'm hoping
Judy?
that's going to,
In the ARPA presentation, I don't know whether you saw it, that we got for town council a couple weeks, there's some money in there for conservation commission, does that include this?
I think the only money is for the title searches for the town-owned parcels.
Okay,
I-
I'm just trying,
that-
we're trying to prioritize that, I was trying to figure out if we could get this into it.
That relates to my like, if UVM did that, was that like a consulting contract for services with the city of
Yes.
Cambridge, or
Yeah,
because obviously they're out of, and this is part of my, my understanding is a lot of these things were underfunded, defunded in Massachusetts a long time ago. And, so, but if maybe if we could reach out to the UVM group and find out what might be involved, what would the timeline be to have any chance of?
right. Well, that's why I
including this
reached out
as
to
an ask for
Cambridge,
ARPA funds?
because he's gonna provide me with all of that,
Oh,
what their
okay, so
timeline was, and, yeah,
and the monetary part?
yes, yes.
Okay.
And they
Oh,
actually
that's
have a
great.
forestry department in Cambridge, so it's a different, which is funny because when I think of Cambridge, I don't think of this, heavily wooded area. But they have a commitment to it, and I think that's important. And I think that's what Wakefield needs to start coming around to, that, we can't just sit around anymore.
And do you think once we have a baseline, Judy, then it's like, is it a bylaw or like, how do you enforce it?
What do you mean enforce it?
Well, I
You
don't know,
mean
like,
the
how do we get, I mean, I think
subdivisions
obviously we have a department that kind of tries to kind of reinforce the right kind of trees and plantings and all of that. I know that I was just looking through my stuff because I thought that maybe Rob had left me with all the park stuff, but he didn't, but he did leave a whole folder that I'll send over to you, Myra, on kind of wetlands and trees and the different bylaws and stuff he looked at. So I don't know. I guess I just don't quite know then like where we take it. Is it convincing we have one tree person in town, right? Is it convincing him of the kinds of things to plant? Is it,
I think
is it
that's
getting new
difficult.
developers to plant certain things? Is it awareness raising around people in our own yards? I don't know.
I think it's all of that. I mean, I think part of it is incorporating more teeth in maybe the planning board rules and regs as far as planting, or as far as, being more vigilant with when they're developing a site, being more conscious of not just clear cutting everything and grinding it down, removing all the topsoil that is the most nutrition. I mean, it's things like that. There's a Healthy Soils Action Plan that Massachusetts passed 2 years ago. Right now, it's based mainly on farming, but it's about more conscious use of site management. And that's something, I mean, when you see the way that the developments are done, and it's not just Wakefield, but it's
Right.
clear cut. And they strip all the topsoil, bring in some other soil that, I'm sure is fine, but the plants aren't going to take the same. And the wildlife loss in site clearing like that people don't realize is pretty devastating.
So that, what Julie just asked relates to what I was wondering too, because you had mentioned when you were talking about what Cambridge did, that like the mapping shows like the areas of greatest need and everything. So I was wondering how that, like, we see areas of great need. Okay, so if that's on town-owned land, then that can be an input into consideration of what we do with that land, how we manage it, et cetera. But when it's on private land, if we see this neighborhood, it's all private land.
Right.
Like, I mean, what's the next step with that? I'm trying to think from the point of view of myself as a homeowner. If a town committee reached out to me and said, hey, we did this mapping thing and we could use a lot more trees here and this is completely voluntary, but here's the type of stuff, like, would we think of an outreach campaign that might try to fill some of those gaps that would show up?
Right, I think it's more of a public awareness type of thing.
Mhm.
I think if you look at it from the canopy perspective, it would have to be the town-owned areas first.
Mhm.
If like in Wakefield, the environmental justice area is pretty devoid of trees, and the commission has talked about that, replanting a lot of that area, in the junction, near the bike trail, things like that. So I think that would probably be the main focus. But even smaller things, like getting people to be more aware of, I know everyone loves a sweeping lawn, But cutting off part of it, when you look at some of them, some lawns that are partially, whether it's pollinator plants or some trees, it adds such a visual appeal to it, that a little bit of diversity. And it might be something that people just don't think about. You're just used to having a lawn and, you have the tractor or whatever you have, or you have the yard service come in. So it's just what you're used to. So it's kind of changing the mindset.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of like where we would go. I mean, great. We should definitely try to see about whether the ARPA funds could support this or something. But then if we had something like this, what could the sustainability committee do that complements what town planning processes, conservation commission, other groups have in hand? And I think maybe part of this public outreach would be the part that we could help with. And I feel like half of what we talk about at these meetings, Judy, is just you educating the rest of us on what you've already been working on. So thank you for that, and apologies if my questions are things you've already been thinking about for a long time. But
well, I think some of the things can be a more simple solution. Sometimes have used demonstration gardens, and they take a town plot that may be, it doesn't have to be a large area, and it's planted beautifully, and then it's all labeled so people can see the native plants, and this is what this one does. This is a pollinator. It can be used as a rain garden. So then people might think, oh, I could do this in my yard. I mean, flooding is a big problem, but what do people do individually in their own yard to capture rainwater? Some people use a rain barrel, but why couldn't you have a rain garden? And it's something that people don't really think about. Where does your water flow? Maybe you could put some plantings in so you don't have washout areas. And then your yard looks better, it's healthier. It promotes more bird life, which decreases the insects. So it's just, I think it's creating an awareness.
I think it'll be fun in the spring to do a sort of awareness of the monarch butterfly, which I was a little traumatized when I saw that it was added to the endangered species list. And so whether we, create our own like pollinator pathway or something, encourage people to plant not only milkweed, but other sort of pollinator native species, and just sort of get some energy around it. And I know,
Right.
The Greenwood Garden sets us up really well. There's a lot of parents and there's a lot of kids that are really passionate about it from that experience of having their pollinator garden be so successful. And so I think, to your point, Sean, I think it would be more on the sort of public education side, but there are some small things that people can do, I think, in terms of what they choose to plant, even in the spring, that can make a big difference, and they could feel like a part of a community if we were really emphasizing pollinator-friendly plants.
Right. Something I talked about before, an idea I had seen online was, and I thought about for adjacent to the farmer's market, they have what's called straw wattles. They use them for erosion. It's just it looks like a sock filled with hay. Mm-hmm. And they plant native seedlings in it. And throughout the farmer's market, people can watch them grow. And then at the end in October during the harvest, they cut them up and they either raffle them off or they give them to people and they plant them in their yard. But throughout the summer, they can see what the plant grows into. And then it gives them a better idea. Some of them will be pollinators. And, it just gives them a better idea of what the flower would look like and how nice some of the native plantings are. So I think that's a simple way to draw people's attention where that's such a high traffic area. And it's such a simple, inexpensive way to do it.
Great. All right. Maybe we can move on to the next item. Next thing I had on the list from before was just Butler Ave. I don't know if there's anything to update on that. I think the to-do item was to keep an eye if that's coming up at town meeting in terms of disposition of the land. And I think the information that was shared with the whole ESC is on this item in particular, very useful for just reminding us about, what's in the purview of the committee and what's not in the purview of the committee, but people can think about individually. But in terms of what I think, my understanding, and somebody can correct me if you see it differently, that if something does come up, we can certainly give attention to the fact that the disposition of that land is something that's being determined at, whether it be a town meeting or another process. So, and we should just keep an eye on it. Was there any other updates on Butler?
Julie, is
Ave, or-
is it gonna be this fall?
No, warrant closes in like 10 days. I've seen nothing on it. So I'll let you know if that changes, but I don't think it's gonna be this fall. I don't think we've gotten the DEP clearance yet.
All right. Next one, we already discussed on this, a bit about this was just this idea of reaching out to universities and other sources of information for technical assistance on things of town priority. So UVM and this mapping would be awesome. Following up with this, I'm happy to follow up with the forestry school and see if there's some information there as well. And then one that was on my list from before and I did not do anything with was the Tufts Pollinator group. But they're very much about promoting pollinator activities. And I think there's already things going on in the town there, obviously we can connect with. You know, so I don't know if others had other ideas about technical assistance, whether it be from universities or elsewhere. I feel like we have several things to connect with and pursue. So I also think we can perhaps be more effective if we don't have too big of a list and rather focus on the things that we might be able to do. But there are things we should add to that. I'm happy to do so. I think the UVM thing and seeing if we could like connect ARPA funds to a mapping like that would be awesome. So I just,
Yeah. Because as trees are lost or gained, it automatically updates. So it's a continuously moving target, which I think is pretty amazing. And I think would be kind of a stunning way for people to look at, you know, it seems some areas seem so heavily vegetated. And then if you see the mapping, it may be a different picture. I think it would be a good eye opener.
Yeah.
As soon as you get that pricing, Judy, let me know, because I was just reminded that we're supposed to be prioritizing. There's another line item in the ARPA for trees that we might be able to
Yes.
put it under. So I'm going to give my priorities to Steve, and I'll make sure that my stuff comes in under trees, and I'll put a note about this as well.
All right. And then the last item, conveniently enough, was giving input on possible uses of ARPA funds, particularly around the lake. But I think our discussion today has been on trees. So, and the tree mapping. So anything else in terms of ARPA asks, but.
Which I had, let me just pull the ARPA list up here. Let me see.
May I quickly ask for a definition of what ARPA is?
Oh, sorry, Andrea. Hi, Andrea. I'm Julie. I'm so sorry I was late.
Not at all. No, nice to meet you.
I was like focused on something else and lost track of time.
Julie is our resident town council representative.
Oh, well,
So she also serves on town council, which is why we always look at her awkwardly when we're like, what's happening in town?
okay, very good. Excellent.
Which means I know enough to be dangerous and can't keep track of everything. September, what are we in October right now, right? September 28th, I
5th,
think
if my
this-
computer's telling the truth.
I know, I can't. Here, let me see here. So ARPA stands for,
American Rescue Plan.
thank you. It's the
And it
COVID
was,
money.
it's federal funds for COVID recovery that the state got and the town got a bunch. And so it's like the last, maybe not the last, but it's a chunk of federal money to help communities recover from COVID and the various other
It's the
impacts
last
that that
until the
period of
next
time had.
national disaster.
Yes.
Yeah, let's hope there's not another national disaster. So yes, American Rescue Plan, essentially because Massachusetts doesn't have a county system, all of the towns divided up the county money. So Wakefield has about $8 million, of which we've really already committed about 2 million to different things. A lot of that was mental health services over the past year. But all of the town councilors and the departments and different committees put forth their, and we did a public survey. And so all of the ideas were presented to us last meeting, and let's see here. And of course, all the asks add up to $27 million. So we have $6 million to spend, $26 million of requests. So in terms of, so, you know, things, lake path feasibility and construction, there's some talk of making a continuous path around the lake, particularly on the North Ave side. So that's not necessarily, I guess that is kind of open spaces. There's a fair bit of land. Judy, I don't know that you've seen this.
Yeah, I don't know how viable that plan is.
Yeah, I
It's,
don't
mean,
know.
it's taking out part of a wetland, you know, I don't know. how that's
Yeah.
gonna-
So there's a
I'm not
lot to
sure
be
that-
talked about in there.
I mean,
That's
this
a
is-
million.
Near the yacht club, maybe there could be something, but I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not
There
sure.
is $500,000 possibly proposed for Lake Q cleanup. I have heard rumblings in the last week or two that there's been a lot of talk about these solar bees, that those are probably not going to work, but I don't know whether there's some money for $500,000 for that. Sidewalk expansion, a splash pad around the lake. See what else here. Public shade, $150,000 for public shade trees. I think, Judy, that's where we maybe tuck in that study. I mean, why do shade trees without kind of or trees in general, right? Without the baseline, which is, I think, the
Right.
study you're talking about.
Right,
So I think that's where we can advocate for that. Signs, fencing, that's all infrastructure stuff. And then there's a lot of other, WCAT, town planner, heating contingency, conservation title searches, $25,000. I'm going to put in definitely that. And we need that, right? Is that part of the open
Yes.
space plan? Okay.
yeah, that's to get the parcels transferred.
And that's like, so we find out all the land that's in town name and make sure we understand who has the rights to it.
It's all the parcels that are tax title. They
Okay.
can't be transferred until they're, until that's cleared, until the title is cleared.
Okay. So yeah, that's really important. Water main improvements, drones are for the police department. So there's a couple of things there that we can advocate for. Rail to trail completion. That's $1 million. I don't know whether that's roads or actual trail. So we'll try to get some of the funding in there. I can send that around.
And some of it, I think, could overlap. When you talk about mental health, I mean, that's a big, Canada now prescribes passes to parks as part of a comprehensive health plan. So I think it's something that people,
Well, and
work up to
I've
during
had
COVID.
constituents come to me and say, don't forget this ARPA money really should be spent on the people, something COVID related and people who suffered under COVID. And you're right. So that's where I like the connection to the mental health. And we all got outside in recreational areas. So I do think that the things that we're advocating for are really directly linked to the purpose of these funds.
And
as
just
opposed to a
enhance-
new road, say.
Right, enhancing some of, like, the new pickleball courts, the enhancement at Moulton, things like
Right.
that get people out, get people connected. I
Right.
think that's a good,
Yeah. So that's what I'm really gonna
yeah.
try to advocate for too.
Julie, you mentioned the public shade trees and that maybe some of this could fall under there. I'm also thinking, and because having the data helps you decide where these things should go. So it's, we really, I'd be curious to know the price tag. I've got to guess that it's going to be tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands. So I'm hoping this is not a complicated ask, even if the total asks on the town are oversubscribed. The other thing I was just reading the reporting of the proposal for the new gas station convenience store at Four Corners and the types of negotiation that goes on there. When somebody's saying, okay, we want to sign this size, sure, but then help pay for traffic light improvements. If we had data on tree planting needs, that could be really powerful as a way of cost sharing things when there are these requests for variances and the like, and there's the negotiation going on saying, okay, but that parcel is in this area where we've identified this need for additional tree canopy. And so consider, can you put that in your plans? It seems to me like it could be not just a win for cost sharing, but it could be a real win-win-win, because sometimes if that's something that they know that a private developer can give us, and it's also going to enhance their, the attractiveness of their property or other things they're doing, like, it might not be a hard ask to say, plant a few trees as you redevelop this or design that.
Right. I mean, I
so it
know
just-
the energy park that's being proposed for the new high school, so for the Voc and the new high school, you know, they're gonna take down 100, I think 128 trees up there if that gets approved. And I mean, I've already said to them, you're gonna need to replace all of those, but then we could tell them kind of, is it with the same, I don't know anything about, right? Is it the same kind? Those, you know, at least get a 1-to-1. So,
But the other thing with the energy park is that's state designated parkland that's now going to be taken away. So I think there's some type of replacement. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what chapter 97 is for, so that there is some protection. So that's going to be taken away from that parcel, which
so
I,
they'll be state required to kind of remediate there?
it has to go to the Senate for them to undo what's been done.
Oh,
Because
right,
it's a
this is
higher
the
level
home
of
rule, right?
protection.
Because that was given to us for playground area or something, is that what that is?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That,
I'm
that
not in-
sounds like,
I'm
that
not in
sounds like
agreement with that.
leverage to me, like, make sure you keep that,
I don't think they have
Even-
a choice.
right,
There can't be a loss, a net loss, but I don't agree with that plan at all. Just my own opinion.
yeah.
I don't think parkland should be given away. And I don't think there's been any discussion about what's going to be taken down. You know, fine, it's going to be a sustainable energy source, but what about the sustainable land use that you're taking away?
We should
That's
definitely
not
talk
part of the
about that.
discussion. Right, and it
Right.
hasn't been part of the discussion.
Well, I don't even think, you know, until it came to town council, they weren't even really saying what it was, so,
That's right. That's right.
well, as I said,
There's
they
been a
weren't
lot
even
of
saying what's going
secretive-
there.
There've been a lot of secretive things going on with the schools.
Yeah, yeah, so. Anyway, I think that there are some opportunities, you know, and there's gonna be some trade-offs too, unfortunately, there always are.
Right. But I think to Sean's point, the town needs to set the example with a robust street tree plan. You know, that,
Mhm.
and, you know, better plantings in areas, things like that.
Well, and also like, I just heard that the area at Water and Farm Street was just like re-landscaped and they put down sod and like, I was like, what a perfect place for natural. You know,
Right.
like we have
Yeah.
little pockets that maybe we as a town, like you say, the shade trees, and as a town, maybe we should be demonstrating good practices.
Right, right. And that's what I'm hoping is going to be part of the initiative when the parcels get transferred over to, under the care of the Conservation Commission. That there's
Yeah.
more robust planting and that it provides an example for people to see. It's not cost prohibitive. It's, once they're planted, they're drought tolerant when they're native plants, you know, they outcompete weeds. And just showing the advantages
Yep.
to a planted area rather than just a grass. Because it's easy, you know, you just run a lawnmower over, it, so it's easy. But if you have it well planted, you don't have to worry about continuous weeding or things like that. It's just changing the mindset.
You're singing my song. You come by my yard every day, Judy, you know,
Yeah, right.
I have lots of weeds.
But a couple of neighbors down from you on the corner of Ames Street, they have that green strip in front of their house planted. It's beautiful.
It is,
And
she's amazing.
It makes such a difference, and I think it's a great example.
Yeah,
I'd like to think now that Julie, your neighbor is going to watch the recording of this and catch this
everybody knows.
heartfelt be compliment this. Yeah.
I'm busy doing things. I don't have time for weeding. I'm a big believer in letting the leaves sit there and compost.
So, all right, so that was our list from before, and it was a lot more discussion than I thought we might have on some of these points, but this is great. I mean, we can definitely add to the list, but we're a limited number of people, and I think you know, I think there's some really important things here that where we can make an impact. So I'm personally not inclined to look for more things to put on a list, but rather how can we prioritize a few things from this? And at the end, I'll summarize with some of the to-dos here and see if anyone else, if I'm missing anything. The other agenda item, which I think we can go through quickly, is just coordination with Conservation Commission. So obviously having these discussions once a month with Judy are really important. I did get the appointment letter for the Open Space Committee, so I'll be participating in that. I didn't hear anything yet about when that's meeting, so I hope that
They
hasn't been
just
determined.
finished the final appointments last night,
Okay, so
so
that's.
it'll be within a few weeks. There'll be
Okay.
plenty of notice ahead of time.
All right, great. And I did see in that, it is it's the open space and recreation plan. The consultant's already been appointed for that Horsley Witten group and all this,
Yes.
and things that Judy, I'm sure, knows really well. So I'll be participating in that. I'll report back on that, and we'll have input through there. I think what maybe might be worth a few minutes of discussion is just so there are other things where we can be coordinating or supporting the Conservation Commission, things that are outside of their bandwidth or scope, that are maybe more in ours, particularly around public education or other things. I think several of those types of things already came up in our conversation so far this evening, but
I forwarded a environmental sustainability handbook that I think Concord had. I sent it
yeah.
to the ESC email. And I think maybe trying to develop something like that would be helpful, kind of a home. I mean, there are a lot of articles that we have on the conservation page about what you can do in your own yard. So it would just be maybe something you could have on your website as well. You have better social media outreach than conservation does. And you see
and it's only getting even better, thanks to Tiana's efforts. And yeah, we've got like a schedule now and everything of like things to post every few days. So
that's good.
And trying to share that on some of the existing town groups from there as well. So and so far I haven't seen any nastiness explode on social media around any of our posts. So I'm waiting
That's a miracle.
for the first flame war to happen under one of our informational posts. But great. So that brings us mostly to the end of the agenda. Next item would just be issues arising. So any issues arising?
The fall is a great time to plant. Anyone wants to plant trees, perennials. Next couple weeks, best time.
All righty. I've always
That's a
got
good message for
extra
Tiana to put on our social
Yes.
media.
I've been planning because I've got, for some reason, there's always maple seedlings that want to come up right against my
Yes.
house all right. So just to summarize the to-dos that I noted, and please add on to this. I know for myself, I'm going to contact Eric Devlin. I'll ask Judy for that contact information, find out more about how to do the coordinating. I will follow up with forestry school contacts and this MT, the Mass Tree Warden Foresters Association, or see if there's some other thing that might be useful for outreach extension there, as well as at some point connect with the Pollinator group. Myra, next to your name, I had that you were going to contact Rob Darnell on his what he did with the mapping, and if there's a way we can just get that information. Anything else, Myra, that I'm missing?
No, but to me, I think a priority for me, the trails, I think would be really a great thing to get done, and something we've been talking about for a while. So I put that high on my priority list.
Okay, so all right, and I think that's where many of our to-dos focus. And then Judy, the one I put down was like, get that costing information from UVM,
Yes.
pass it on to Julie. And I think I don't know if there was anything else that you had as a takeaway on it to do here, but I
No,
thought
I don't think so.
Yeah. All right. So then okay, so that was matters not anticipated. Oh, we're meant to schedule our next meeting as well. How do these Wednesdays feel for people?
Good.
All righty. So if we went approximately a week out, we would be looking at the 2nd of November at 7:30 p.m. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
And I will try to do better about forwarding out draft minutes earlier, because I think that's also a useful reminder for things that, at least to me, of things that I want to do before the next meeting. All right. So that's it. We're ready to adjourn and take a motion to adjourn, but my understanding of Robert's rules is that if you get to the end of an agenda, that you don't have to have a motion to adjourn, but I don't know,
Right.
we always seem to
I
end with
didn't
formal
know
motions
that.
to adjourn. I don't know, because we always end the ESC meetings with a vote on adjournment. So.
That's what we do at council too.
Okay,
Well, I'll
So-
make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
all right, all in favor?
Yes.
All right, thank you all.
Thanks, Sean.
everybody.
See
Nice to
most of
see
you
you. Nice
next
to meet
at
you.
the
Bye.
nice to meet you,
full committee
Andrea.
meeting.
Good
Bye.
meeting you
See you
all.
Saturday.
Thank you.
See you
Have a good one.
Saturday.
Bye-bye.